All right, so you're someone who likes to get things done right. You want to make smart choices, and that includes how you get around here in the UAE.
I think a lot of us are thinking more and more about those choices these days.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when it comes to our cars and, the whole impact on the environment thing.
Well, that's what today's deep dive is all about.
You got we're taking a good look at this the ultimate guide to eco-friendly driving in the UAE. It's a pretty thorough resource.
Oh, yeah, it's packed with information and tips.
So our mission today, I guess, is to try and sort of pull out the most practical stuff, the stuff that you and I can actually use.
Yeah, exactly. We want to find those maybe even surprising things you can do to lessen your impact,
Hmm.
you know, without having to like totally overhaul your life.
Right, because let's be real, for most of us in the UAE, having a car isn't some sort of luxury. It's a necessity.
Absolutely. It's how we get around, it's how we get things done.
So we're not going to preach about ditching the car altogether, but we are going to explore how to make that necessary driving a little bit greener, a little bit kinder to the planet.
And to your wallet, potentially, which is always nice.
Okay, so maybe the first thing that pops into people's minds when we talk about eco-friendly driving is electric cars or hybrid cars, right?
Yeah, that's often the go-to thought. But the guide actually makes a really good point that it's not the only way to make a difference.
Definitely. But for those who are considering that switch, going electric or hybrid, what does the UAE landscape look like these days? It's changing so rapidly, actually. I mean, the guide mentions a few examples. Like you've got the Tesla Model 3, the Toyota Prius, the BMW i3, but those are just a tiny snapshot, really.
I was just going to say, I feel like there are way more options popping up all the time.
Oh, absolutely. The range of electric and hybrid vehicles available here is expanding constantly.
And what about the infrastructure? I mean, are we seeing more charging stations and all that?
Mhm.
Definitely. Yeah, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, they've all been investing heavily in charging infrastructure.
Which makes sense. I mean, the UAE has made some pretty big commitments to sustainability in general.
Oh, yeah. And you can't ignore the rising cost of petrol either.
Right. So it's becoming more and more appealing from both an environmental and an economic standpoint.
Exactly. It's not just a feel-good choice anymore for money. It's actually starting to make more financial sense, too.
Okay, so EVs and hybrids are definitely a big part of the conversation. But let's shift gears a bit to something that every car owner can do, regardless of what they drive, regular maintenance.
Ah, the unsung hero of eco-friendly driving.
Right. You might think it's just about keeping your car running smoothly, but the guide really emphasizes how much it affects fuel efficiency.
Oh, yeah, big time. It's
Yeah.
amazing how much of a difference it can make.
Like they had this example about a misaligned wheel.
Yeah, just a slight misalignment can apparently increase your fuel consumption by like 3%.
Seriously? Wow, I never would have guessed.
And think about how much we drive here in the UAE. Those little percentages add up quick.
That's true. Hundreds of extra dirhams, maybe even thousands over a year just from a wonky wheel.
It really puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
It does. And the guide also specifically calls out tire pressure.
Ah, yes, tire pressure. That's crucial, especially in this heat.
I never really thought about it, but it makes sense. Like, underinflated tires mean more rolling resistance.
Exactly. More resistance means your engine has to work harder, burning more fuel.
And the guide mentions that tires lose pressure faster in hot weather, too.
Oh, yeah. So regular checks are even more important here than in other places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm curious for you listening. How often are you checking your tire pressure, really?
Good question. I'll admit I'm probably guilty of forgetting sometimes.
It's easy to overlook,
Yeah.
but it's such a quick and easy thing to do with potentially big benefits.
All right, so we've got regular maintenance covered. What about those low rolling resistance tires I keep hearing about?
Okay, so these are basically tires that are designed to be, super efficient. They reduce the energy lost as they roll, which means less work for your engine and better mileage.
So they're like the marathon runners of the tire world.
Exactly. And, they do this by minimizing the friction between the tire and the road surface.
I see. So less friction equals less energy needed to move the car.
Precisely. And the good news is that major tire brands like, Michelin, Bridgestone, Goodyear, they all offer eco-friendly models that are specifically designed for the UAE's climate and roads.
So you don't have to worry about sacrificing performance or safety.
Nope, you can actually find some pretty high-tech tires that are both eco-friendly and built to handle the conditions here.
And I guess the trade-off is that they might cost a bit more upfront.
Yep, potentially.
Right.
But the long-term savings on fuel and the reduced emissions should more than make up for it.
It's that classic investment versus savings equation, but with an environmental bonus thrown in.
Exactly. It's about thinking long-term, both for your wallet and for the planet.
Now, here's something from the guide that I found surprisingly simple. but effective reducing vehicle weight.
Ah, yes. The less is more approach.
I wouldn't have immediately connected that to eco-friendly driving, but it makes perfect sense when you think about it.
It's basic physics, right? A lighter car needs less energy to move.
And the guide actually had some pretty interesting statistics about how much extra weight we tend to carry around in our cars.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot more than you'd think.
Yeah.
Things like unnecessary stuff in the trunk roof racks that aren't being used.
Guilty as charged. I'm sure my trunk is a time capsule of things I haven't touched in months.
Well, you're not alone. Apparently, the average driver in the UAE is lugging around a significant amount of extra weight, which translates to a huge amount of wasted fuel collectively.
Wow, so decluttering my car is not just about tidiness, it's actually an environmental act.
Exactly, and it's good for your car's performance, too. A lighter vehicle handles and brakes better, especially at higher speeds.
All right, so we're cleaning out our cars for a greener drive. Who knew? Now let's talk about something we have control over every time we get behind the wheel, our driving habits.
Yes. This is where the rubber really meets the road, so to speak.
The guide emphasizes that small adjustments to how we drive can make a big difference in terms of fuel efficiency and emissions.
It's all about being more mindful and deliberate behind the wheel.
So what kind of habits are we talking about specifically?
Well, for one thing, smooth acceleration. Avoid that lead foot temptation.
Yeah, I can see how Jackrabbit starts would guzzle gas.
They do big time. It takes a lot of fuel to get that sudden burst of speed.
So easing into acceleration is key. What else?
Maintaining a consistent speed, stick to the speed limit, avoid unnecessary speeding up and slowing down.
Right, because constant fluctuations in speed are going to burn more fuel.
Exactly. Steady as she goes is the motto for eco-friendly driving.
And I remember the guide also mentioned something about idling.
Oh yes, idling. That's a big one. If you're going to be stopped for more than a minute or so, turn off your engine.
I'm definitely guilty of that, especially when I'm waiting to pick someone up or something. It's so easy to just sit there with the engine running.
And the AC blasting, I bet.
Busted, but seriously, it's a habit I need to break.
It makes a difference, though, not just for fuel efficiency, but also for your engine and your brakes. They'll last longer if you're not constantly idling.
Another one of those win-win scenarios. I like it. Now let's zoom out a bit and think about transportation in general. The guide also touches on carpooling and public transit.
Right. Thinking beyond the single occupancy vehicle.
And that's becoming more and more feasible here in the UAE, especially with the improvements to public transportation in places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
The metro systems are fantastic, and the bus networks are expanding all the time.
And the guide suggests that even just using these alternatives a couple of times a week can make a noticeable dent in your carbon footprint.
Absolutely, and carpooling with colleagues or friends who live nearby is another great option.
Fewer cars on the road means less traffic congestion, which benefits everyone.
And of course, cleaner air, which is something we can all appreciate.
Now here's a thought. What about using solar power for our cars?
Yes. Harnessing the power of the UAE sun.
I mean, we've got plenty of it, right?
Oh, yeah. Tons of it. And there are actually a bunch of solar-powered accessories you can get for your car.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, you've got solar-powered car fans, for instance. Great for keeping your car cool without draining your battery.
That's genius, especially in this heat. And I've also seen those solar trickle chargers.
Those are great for maintaining your battery's charge, especially if you don't drive your car very often.
Yeah, it's amazing how much technology is out there to help us be more eco-friendly.
It is. And the guide even hints at some even more futuristic possibilities, like solar paints and integrated solar panels on vehicles.
Wow, so our cars could actually become little power plants in a way.
It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Technology is moving pretty fast in that area.
That's really exciting. Okay, one last thing from the guide that I wanted to touch on, eco-friendly car cleaning products.
Ah, yes. Even how we wash our cars can have an impact.
I never really thought about it, but those harsh chemicals in regular car wash soap, they can't be good for the environment.
They're not. They can end up in the water system and cause all sorts of problems.
So what are the alternatives?
Well, you can find biodegradable, water-saving car wash soaps that are much gentler on the environment.
So look for the eco-friendly labels, basically.
And there are also professional eco-wash services that use recycled water and minimize chemical runoff.
So even something as simple as getting your car washed can be done in a more sustainable way.
It's all about making those conscious choices.
Mm.
Looking for the options that are better for the planet.
So to sum it all up, this deep dive into eco-friendly driving has really highlighted that it's not about making huge sacrifices. It's about making a series of small adjustments and being more aware of our
It's
choices.
about those everyday actions,
Yeah.
taking those little steps that add up to a bigger impact.
Exactly. And it's empowering to realize that we can all make a difference, even in something as routine as driving.
And it's not just about individual actions either. It's about contributing to the UAE's larger sustainability goals.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, I'd like to leave our listeners with a little something to think about.
A parting thought.
Exactly. What's one small change you can make to your driving habits starting today? Something that maybe you haven't considered before, but that could make a real difference in the long run.
It's worth pondering, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every little bit counts, and those little bits can add up to something much bigger.
So until next time, drive safe, drive smart, and drive a little bit greener.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.